Hey guys, welcome back. I don't know if there's much point to this video, but we're literally just hanging out in my plant room while I check on plants, check on props, look at new leaves. This has become like my favorite part of the day. And I used to be able to go like a couple of days without coming in and like opening up my tent and looking at things. But like this is a ritual that I have been obsessed with. Like I have found myself lost in my plant room so many times lately, and I've been so happy to be here, and like it's hard to leave here sometimes. This is actually not the video I planned to upload today. I had filmed earlier this week 2.5 hours of plant chores, and I had to completely abandon that video because like I made a really horrible mistake. I got a new mic for Christmas. This is what you're listening to right now, is my new mic, and I made the mistake of using it for the first time without checking or changing any settings on my camera, and the audio was just poo-poo caca. It was so bad. There was nothing I could do to fix it in post. It was just like so far gone. So I've made some tweaks. Hopefully it's better, but it was kind of sad, and it's now really late in the week and I only have like a day to edit this and get it up on Sunday. So we're gonna keep it really chill. I have a couple of new plants to show you, and then we're just gonna look at new leaves that have just been giving me so much serotonin these days. And I kind of also want to look through some of my propagations to see what's ready for sale. So in the video that I scrapped, I collected a bunch of plants I needed to chop, and I was explaining in that video that I need to like be propagating a lot more aggressively than I have been. And it's just like not something that comes super naturally to me because I'd taken such a long break from propping my plants. I think it was like over a year where I had vowed to like lay off the chopping and let my plants get big. So it just wasn't something that was like coming to mind a lot. But as time has gone on since I quit my job and now I'm self-employed, I realized that like if I'm not constantly chopping and feeding my prop areas, I'm not gonna be able to have plants to sell as consistently as I'd like. So I'll show you the cuttings that I took. I want to go through older propagations to see what is ready because I need to give Lauren kind of like a sense of how many plants are going to be ready for sale next week. So it's coming Friday when you see this. We're having another live sale at North Shore Tropical. So I'll bring some plants, and I think Charmaine's bringing a handful. But every live sale where I'm not able to bring plants to sell, I'm just kind of like kicking myself a little bit. So I'm just trying to like think ahead a little bit. But I'll show you the new plants first. Last week at the last live sale, Jessie brought some plants to sell, and one of them I swiped from the table before it even made it onto the sale because I was looking at it like I've never seen this plant before, and I felt like I was going to regret it if I just let it go. So I took her home. This is some sort of Anthurium SP Peru. I think this was purchased from Equigenera, but what really caught my eye was this red sinus right here. It was a little bit sad. So I've already repotted and I chopped it and everything right after I filmed that last video. So right now it's potted in tree fern soil with leca at the bottom, what I've been doing with a lot of my Anthuriums. It was in just straight leca and no drainage, and Jessie was like, this needs a repot. It was pretty root bound and it would just wasn't looking super happy. Like this is exactly what it looked like when I first brought it home. The newest leaf though was just stunning, and like me and Charmaine were both looking at it like, what is it? And we were both very intrigued by it. So I think I'll see if she wants the bottom cutting that I took, but I'm really taken by this like very red margin and that like inky dark kind of like seaweed colored leaf, and just like the really evil looking shape. It has a square petiole, just like luxuriance, like very pink and square. Like even though the petioles are kind of long, they seem very upright. So I don't think it's going to have like a annoying growth pattern. So that's the new plant I had to show you. I have another plant to show you that's not mine, but she's staying here for a little bit. This is a plant that I've talked about so many times on this channel. This is Miss Tofu. This leaf is probably ready to go. We'll see. Yeah, it'll come off. Let's take her off so she looks cuter for the camera. Okay, so this is Miss Tofu. She is here on contract from Jing. This is the newest leaf. It's like, well, it's not the newest leaf. There's a newer leaf, but it hasn't expanded yet. But this is what it looks like. Here's the leaf that it just put out. I don't know if it's gonna expand okay. It looks like the tip slightly got either dried out or damaged. So the reason why she's here is because me and Jing are gonna do Tofu Gedii round 2. So she's gonna be the mother again because my dark Gedii is already producing berries. So I feel like it could probably take a second pollination, but just the timing of the inflow is not gonna work out. My Gedii is slightly further along than tofu. Tofu's just emerging from the spathe right now. And the forgetii right now is receptive. So it's going to be producing pollen slightly around the time that this is receptive, I hope. I feel like I know that plant well enough to know that like it moves through the phases pretty quickly. I don't know tofu very well. It's not my plant. So my guess is that it's going to line up pretty well timing wise. So it'll be producing pollen by the time this is receptive. So tofu is just like a no ID Indo hybrid. I don't know what it was sold to Jing as. Maybe it was like Ace of Spades or something, but it bears some resemblance to like a mag crossed with Ace, but I don't think that Ace is like a true Ace of Spades is like very available in Indonesia. And like my feeling is that it's Ace of Spades crossed with like Pappy. There's probably forgetii in there. Every now and then tofu and like props from tofu will produce a semi-fused sinus. And some other plants from last tofu getii batch was like really dark, kind of elongated, made me think that it looks like Pappy. So even though tofu's kind of a little bit sad right at the edges, you can still see how pretty she is. The texture is really, really pretty. And the offspring from her was just like so fun because every plant looked so completely different. So my tofu getii, my biggest one probably looks the most like tofu, kind of. Well, like they both have that red sinus. They both have kind of like a pebbly, like thin veined. My tofu getii is like semi-fused sinus. I'll show you on the newest leaf here. It's like half fused to here. I don't know. I just think that you can kind of tell that it's a offspring of tofu, but my smaller tofu getii looks so different. It has like a V-shaped sinus on pretty much every leaf. If I just turn you around compared to this one, they don't really look the same. This one doesn't really have the red sinus that this one does. Tofu has a red sinus, and the new leaves are a lot redder on this guy. And this plant, I don't know why, the leaves are so thick, like super, super thick and like girthy. This one is like kind of like a normal velvet Anthurium texture. And then like I have another runt that I don't think is really worth showing. So I'm really excited to do another seed batch of this. I'm going to probably grow out the berries, pop them, separate them into half, give the seeds and the mom back to Jing. I don't know if she wants to repot it, but tofu is not, like she's pretty well rooted in pond. Like those roots look quite healthy. And I've just been leaving a reservoir in here. It's just like topped with moss, but it's all pond down here. Jing said that tofu, I think like many leaves in a row was like growing leaves and then like aborting the leaf. So the leaf would never expand. It would just kind of shrivel off, which Anthuriums often do when they're like undernourished, maybe don't get enough light. So she put it into more light. And then finally she got a leaf to actually expand. This one seems to be holding on as well. So I have it in a pretty well lit spot, just right in the corner here where I keep like smaller plants. So it's pretty close to the light. It's not bleaching the plant at all. But yeah, that's a fun little update I wanted to share with you. I think I'm just gonna swing you around. I'm just gonna pull stuff out of the tent and chit chat while we hang out. And I'm assuming some of you are probably doing some plant chores of your own while you're listening to me. So the other day while I filmed the video that didn't work out, I just gathered the bin of plants I had pulled to be chopped and I just went chopping. And it was just kind of a dilemma because I wanted to be able to sell and propagate plants, but there was some plants that I couldn't cut because long term it would have been better just to keep it as like breeding parents. But there were some plants that I also didn't want to cut because like I love them so much and I didn't want to like stunt their growth, but I just had to. So I cut my Lux Ralphinum Fort Sherman. This is the top cutting that I'm keeping for myself. It kind of hardened off this leaf. It seems okay. I've been like just nervously checking this to see if like the leaves are getting softer. I think it's getting a little bit soft, but it's not like throwing a huge fit. It's potted in tree fern soil. And I'm just like nervously checking for roots, even though it's been like 2 days. It's back in the tent where it used to be tree fern soil with like at the bottom. And I'm just like praying that it's okay. I only have one cut from it. It was grown from seed, so it's not a very big stem, but this is the propagation. I'm going to let it grow out another leaf before I sell it. And it's also in tree fern soil. There's no drainage with like at the bottom. And yeah, just really keeping my fingers crossed for this one because I would be so sad. I also am not going to sell it until I know that mom is okay. But the main reason why I chopped it is not because I wanted to, because I do really love this plant, but I don't plan on breeding it anytime soon, if at all. And I know that this is like a really nice hybrid that someone would be really happy to own. So I just kind of sucked it up and chopped her. So yesterday we were at the shop, me and Charmaine, we were like working a day at the shop. We were getting so much stuff done, but then like there was a big winter storm coming in. Well, not a big winter storm, a big, huge, like Arctic wind came in and basically shut the city down. So yesterday was kind of a traumatizing day, especially for Charmaine. So Charmaine drove. It started snowing around about lunchtime, and I didn't think it was going to be anything because there's no snow in the forecast, and it was just like a light dusting of like really tiny, just dust-sized snow. So I was like, it'll be fine. Let's keep working. 2 o'clock rolls around. The snow is getting bigger. It's starting to stick in like garden beds and stuff. It wasn't sticking on the roads where they had salted. And then like it was just getting worse and worse. So like at 3 o'clock, Lauren's like, we need to leave right now. It was like full on evacuation mode. And I didn't want to leave. Charmaine didn't want to leave. We were on a roll with the chores. We were getting so much done. And I was just like, oh, I don't want to leave. So we did. And it was just awful. It was so awful. You will see a little snippet of it in Charmaine's week of for January. So like in a few weeks, couple weeks, she'll be posting that video. But we did a little car chat because I was like, we might as well just kill some time. Like we're stuck in the worst traffic ever. In normal traffic, which is already really bad coming from North Vancouver down to like Vancouver proper, it normally takes about 40 minutes to get from there to my house in pretty bad traffic. Yesterday, it took us 2.5 hours. We were just sitting there. Cars were sliding around. We were seeing cars getting stuck on the off ramps of highways, on the on ramps of highways. People were just like sitting there, just jackknife, not doing anything. We had to take all these like back roads home, and it was super stressful. We got home fine, and like she is like desperately needing to go to the bathroom because she's pregnant and she needs to go to the bathroom like every 2 seconds. So she came inside, and I was like, why don't you just like stay for a bit and just let the traffic die down a little bit before leaving? But at the same time, it was like really nerve-wracking because every hour that was passing by, the temperatures were dropping. So at the start of the day, she was like in sunglasses. She didn't even bring a jacket with her. By the late afternoon, it was probably like -6 degrees. And it was dropping and dropping and dropping. It was getting icier and icier. I was thinking she could either stay at my house or she could just like wait a little bit for like traffic to die down a bit and then go home without having to sit through like an hour and a half of traffic, which normally without traffic, it takes about 10-15 minutes to get from my house to hers. But yesterday it took her almost 2 hours to get home from my house. And there were highways like fully shut down because like one highway had a 25 car collision on a curve, and it just completely shut the highway down, and people were just like sitting there. I think they reopened it around 5 a.m. this morning. So they were just like sitting there, abandoning their vehicles. It was a freaking mess. And I felt so bad because Charmaine would have in total been driving for like 5 hours yesterday, and it was just an inch of snow and ice, and like Vancouver completely shuts down. It is so embarrassing. So you guys give Charmaine a virtual hug because she really went through the ringer yesterday. I don't know if this plant is ready for sale, but it is so cute. This is my Carla BVEP. This is from Juan and Grant's collaboration. So this is Carla, the Juan Carla crossed with BVEP Round. I believe it's BVEP Round, and it's so cute. I just don't know if I want to sell it just yet. This one's pretty much hardened. I mean, I feel like it might be okay to sell at this point. I just don't know how to sell it because the leaf is like hanging off the edge. I can't dome it anymore, and I just don't feel good about it being out in ambient conditions. I guess I could maybe I could put it into deli cup, but then this leaf is still hanging off the edge. I don't know. Maybe I could do a short deli cup and a short deli cup and like put polyfill around the edges so it doesn't hit the side of the deli cup. I just can't decide if this is like the right time to sell it or like the best size to ship it at, or should it grow another leaf and root more, because it's not gonna really root pretty much out of the existing stem. I think it's just gonna start pushing roots out from the new stem, the new growth. There's like some dead roots in here, but I don't even think that it's worth taking it out to trim off those dead roots, like, because it's not going to further root out of those live roots from the original stem. I don't know. I'll decide later, but look at this sinus. It's so buttholey. Lauren had bought a Juan Carla cross with, it was another Juan and Grant collaboration. It's Juan Carla cross with Grant's round Carla. Yeah, I think it's round Carla. So it was like pure Carla, and hers has exactly the same sinus as this one. I'll see if I can get her to send me the photo of her Carla, because look at that sinus. It looks exactly the same. Speaking of Carlas, I have to show you this new leaf. I am so obsessed with this plant. I don't think I'm ever gonna shut up about Carla, like in the same way that I never shut up about Dark Phoenix, because look at this leaf. Every day I look in my tent and I'm in disbelief of how pretty it is and how easygoing this plant has been to grow, and it's been sizing up, and how amazingly dark it is. It has completely lived up to all my hopes and expectations. This is the leaf before it, and it's like not that veiny, but look how veiny this one is, and it's really narrow, and you can just see how inky black it is. Like, it is so saturated. I'm not super good at growing dark velvety plants extra dark. This took no effort on my part. All I did was leave it in my tent, plant it in tree fern soil, never let it dry out, feed it exactly the same as I do my other plants, and it has been weirdly easier than my Carla hybrids. Like, as a pure species, you would expect it to be a little bit more finicky than a hybrid, but this has been easier. This one has been growing steadily, it's been sizing up. I feel like it's gonna be poking out its next leaf by the time this is fully hardened to green. It's not a huge size up from the leaf before it, but it is a size up, and it looks like way more silvery. And yeah, I was talking to Charmaine yesterday in the car. I was asking her, because these are plants that we kind of have joint custody on. This is from Woohoo Tropicals. So I was asking her, like, would she rather I cut her cutting for her, like when it's ready to be cut, or do you want me to wait and breed it and then we can kind of like share on the berries? And she's like, I don't care. I think she's like not really trying to bring extra plants, especially one that has like, did I say especially? Especially ones that like require a lot of care or like are quite precious and would add any sort of stress. So I think we kind of came to the conclusion that I should just grow it a little bit larger, get it to flower, and see if we can breed it. But this has grown bigger and faster than I had ever even dreamed of it doing. So maybe that time will come sooner than expected. But if you had asked me when I first got the plant, when this was the biggest leaf, I would be like, it's probably 2 years before it gets to any sort of flowering size, but it maybe is sooner than we think. Looking at photos online, it doesn't look like Carla's one of those anthuriums that flowers like very late, as in like it gets really big and then flowers. I don't think it's as juvenile of a flower as Forgetii, which is like basically still a baby and it's flowering, but I don't think it needs to be huge in order to flower. But speaking of Carla BVEP, this is the one that we got in that box. It looks very different from the Juan Grant Carla BVEP. It's very kind of muted, very minimal venation. It has more of like a seaweedy, mossy color. The hardened leaf is quite blue, but the newer leaf is like more brown toned. It has really light tree fern soil. I upsized this like a few weeks ago. It has pond at the bottom. I'm trying to remember which repot this was. I think it was like one of the ones over the Christmas holidays, but it did size up nicely. It went from a cup this size to this, just because like the leaf was so big in comparison. It was like going lower than the cup itself, so I wanted to get into something taller. It wasn't the hugest upsize, but it was definitely an upsize, and it has definitely enjoyed the new substrate, the bigger pot, and it's sizing up. This method of sizing up pots has just been working so great for anthuriums. I won't say it works great for every genus, but yeah, this one has been pretty easy to grow. I would say kind of a little bit easier than my Juan Grant Carla BVEP, but I haven't been able to get it quite as dark as I think it could be. This is the fully hardened leaf, and I think it's pretty dark, but I feel like when I look at like Amanda's dark anthuriums, she's able to get them like super black. And she chalks it up to using like very strong dose of TPS1. So that's kind of part of the reason why I've been like pushing everything to drainage, so I can like try to increase the feed. So like I try one concentration, nothing burns, kind of increase it a little bit, see if anything burns. I'm doing it very, very gradually, but I feel safer about it using drainage holes. And like the annoying thing about drainage holes is like when the roots kind of creep out, and it's like really hard to get the roots out without breaking them. And it's kind of impossible sometimes, but if I can stay on top of upsizing the pots regularly, I won't have as much root escaping as I would if I was leaving it in there to get root bound like I used to be doing. And then my original Carla BVEP, I really don't have the easiest time with this one. It's not so finicky and difficult, but I cannot get it to be as black as Amanda can. This is quite green. I mean, just compare it to the pure Carla. Same conditions, same tent. I would say they pretty much get exactly the same amount of light, same feeds, exact same potting setup. The Carla is so much darker than the Carla BVEP, and I know this plant can be super dark because when I first got it from Amanda, it was really dark. I would say it was probably about as dark as the Carla. Sorry, my phone is going off because Charmaine is asking if we have pollen for her because she wants to breed her Brielle. Her Brielle is like a kind of crystal hopi looking plant from Doc Block. And I'm trying to see if I have any pollen for her. Okay, so my Carla BVEP did flower, but it didn't make a lot of pollen, and I don't even know if it's any good anymore. It's not super old, but the inflow is dying now, but there's very little pollen on there. And I think that's like the only thing that's like fun. You know, I have so much forgetti in flower. I have Lux pollen in the freezer from Jessie, but I don't know if she wants to do Brielle Lux. I feel like her best bet is gonna be to get Jessie to rummage through his pollen stores. Because I think he had like red crystal pollen. I don't know if it's worth trying this. It's such a tiny, tiny amount of pollen on there. This is the first inflow on the plant, and I don't know if it's like worth risking. I guess if she really wanted to pollinate that plant, I don't know if it's really gonna be a good gamble. Anyways, what I was saying is that this plant doesn't get as dark. This is probably the nicest leaf I've ever grown, but it's still so green. But of the two Carla BVEPs, I prefer this one. I think it's like a prettier cross. I think that I'm probably gonna move it up into a bigger pot and into tree fern soil, because this is tree fern like without soil, because I had chopped it and I was like kind of scared to put it into soil. So I just put it into straight tree fern and it rooted pretty well in it. It's pretty full of roots. I will probably pot it up even though it looks like it doesn't need to get into a bigger pot, but it just hasn't been holding on to leaves. Like this leaf is starting to go. Anyways, who else should I show you guys? Oh, this one. I recently posted a photo of this one on Instagram. This was a repot that I did. I don't think I did it on camera, but I did show it pretty recently. This is my Meg Chris crossed with Carla Blackier from Amanda. I showed it in my then versus now video in December, and it was looking like really sad and like very, I'll put the footage in so you can see for yourself. It was not a happy camper, so I moved it up into a bigger pot and tree fern. Was it a bigger pot? Yeah, it was bigger pot and tree fern soil rather than straight up tree fern with perlite and pond. And it blessed me with this beautiful, beautiful leaf, and it also has taken to the substrate really well. There's quite a lot of roots kind of everywhere. So this is probably a month in. Yeah, some roots are like hitting the bottom here. And this leaf is just magnificent. Like the color is so much nicer now. It's super dark. When the leaf came out, it was such a beautiful like dark red, and it was just like this beautiful Carla-y venation. I just love this plant. And I was gonna let the leaves, like the ugly leaves, just kind of yellow off and die on their own, but I ended up just chopping them off just because I really wanted to leave that era behind. And it's still a little bit floppy, so maybe it'll expand a tiny bit, not too much. But this plant definitely made quite a nice comeback. I feel like Lauren has this hybrid as well from Amanda. I just haven't seen it. I'm gonna have to look for it next week when I'm at the shop. But this is another plant I still need to chop for Charmaine. I haven't chopped it at all since I got it, just because it's been like on and off, like happy, sad, happy, sad. But at the rate that it's rooting out in this pot, I'm gonna have to like unpot it soon. So at that point, I'm gonna chop it. I don't remember if I've shown you this plant recently. This is my Dark Phoenix crossed with Ralph Lauren Fort Sherman from Cartel. The newest leaf looks so angry. I don't know what this little, you know, curve thing is, but I'm not mad at it. It looks straight up evil. And the color on this plant, it looks so high contrast. Like no matter how I photograph it, it looks like HD. You know those HD filters that people put over like real estate photos? That's what it looks like to me. It's got such a nice texture. I cannot wait to chop this. It's growing like a monster because it has a new leaf coming out. It has a new leaf coming out pretty much all the time, and it's producing 2 offsets as well. This one right here and one kind of down at the base. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it. Now that I'm showing you that, I did show you this plant pretty recently, but I don't think this evil leaf was out when I last showed you it. It was probably like pretty small still, so this is how it hardened off. It's living in my pond mix in no drainage. I think it's not that far off from needing a repot, but I think I'm gonna leave it in here until I can like kind of separate those offsets. I just hope that they both continue growing and like one doesn't go dormant in favor of the other. Okay, last plant from the tent I think I'm gonna show you, and then I gotta show you some stuff in the exos. My Ace of Spades is continuing to size up, but it's also been a hard plant for me to get super dark. I'm gonna have to look at old photos of Amanda's mother plant that she cut it from. This is from Silver Chrome Gardens, and I have a feeling hers is much darker than mine because mine pretty much hardens off like this color, and I just know that Ace of Spades can be darker than this. I did move it back further from the light, so it used to be like doing this like backing up thing, like leaning back away from the light, and I used to have it right up the front where it's kind of like maybe within a foot or so of grow lights. There's like close one from above and there's one like vertically in front of it. So I pushed it to the back of the tent, so it's getting only light kind of like diagonally in front of it. And the hope was that it would start to like push leaves facing forward in front of the pot, which it has done, but it also didn't get any darker under less light. So I'm still playing around with it. Maybe this is about as dark as it gets, but it's getting bigger, and it's getting kind of too big for my tent, which is alarming because I don't want to grow this outside until maybe late spring at the earliest. I want to keep it in here until like it can kind of survive out here, because spoiler alert, I'm going to show you later, spider mites are creeping their way back into the plant room. I am going to do another round of predatory mites, and I did a huge spray down in the video that got scrapped. So any of my precious plants are staying in the tent where it's safe, where there's no spider mites as of right now. But I am going to like redo the predatory mites just to make sure that this stays clean. I'm gonna do them in my exos where I found spider mites. I don't know how, I didn't put any new plants in there. But the exciting thing is I had a little peek earlier and the ace is finally on caterpillars. So I get this question like every now and then, and I know a lot of you will know this, but the significance of caterpillar growth with anthuriums is that, okay, let me start over. So a juvenile anthurium will be growing leaves out of the petiolar sheath. So for example, this leaf emerged out of the petiole of this leaf. So this is the sheath that it came out of. So now this one has that little protruding bump, but if I peek into the sheath of the previous leaf, I see a little caterpillar. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it, but there is a little caterpillar in there. So that means that this is now going to be an inflow that, or like the potential for an inflorescence or a flower to emerge out of this sheath instead of another leaf. It's the same thing as philodendrons, where like as a juvenile philodendrons, there are some exceptions, of course, like heteroecium always grows out of caterpillar, but most juvenile philodendrons will grow leaves out of the petiole until you see that spike with the caterpillar, and that means it's moving on to a mature form. So I had half a mind to chop this ace because, like I said, I need to generate some income, but seeing the caterpillar made me stop because it's at a size where it could potentially flower soon, within the next few leaves, possibly, if it's happy. And that's not always a reason why I don't chop an anthurium, but like thinking of my friend group, and like I like to collaborate breeding with friends. It's just easier for me. Like I see them anyways. I don't like to go super out of my way to do these things. So it's really convenient to have friends with like flowering anthuriums, and we can just kind of like share these things. And I'm looking at my friend group and I'm like thinking are there any flowering size ace of spades in this like immediate circle? And I think there aren't any that are flowering. So I feel like maybe this is the best chance to have a flowering ace in the nearer-ish future. So I didn't chop it. I potted this into tree fern soil from Tree Fern, maybe about, I want to say like 5 or 6 weeks ago. And it's been really, really happy. I said I wanted to up pot it once this leaf hardens off. I feel like I could. I'll put it into like not a huge size pot. I could, in theory, put it into a massive pot, but there's just not enough space in there. So I'm gonna do like an incremental upsize on it. Another plant I chopped is my big wendlingeri. Well, it's kind of big now. The newest leaf hardened off super beautifully, and I chopped it. I chopped it and I repotted it into a much bigger pot. It used to be in that like the large square pot. So this is probably a few inches of upsize. It went from tree fern to tree fern soil. Still pretty heavy on the tree fern. It has like on the bottom, it had tons of aerial roots kind of just like flying around everywhere. So it's all in the substrate now. I made sure to pot the caterpillar like over the lip of the pot so the next leaf will come out over rather than hit the edge of the pot, which is a mistake I've made before. It's been a couple days since the chop and the leaves are feeling really good. There's a good root system on it still, so I feel like it was a pretty safe chop. I think I got 2 cuttings off of it. I'll have to double check, but yeah, the roots are looking good. No new roots that I can see yet, but it's only been like 2 days. And the reason why I wanted to chop it is because I wanted to send a cutting to Owen. So if you are like in any of the Anthurium groups, or if you follow Owen on Instagram, you'll know that he's like the wendlingeri crusader. Like he has a love for wendlingeri I've never seen anywhere else. And I just love that about him because I'm personally obsessed with wendleys as well. But Owen's like on another level. And I just love when people just unabashedly love something so much, and it has nothing to do with hype or rarity. It's just like a really wholesome, honest love for a species. I was chatting with him and he said he doesn't think he has this particular wendley type, and we don't know what it is. I mean, I don't know what it is, and he has like maybe guesses. He says there are similarities to another like very wide leaf waxy type, because this wendley is very waxy, super, super thick, and it's kind of on the shinier side. It's not as velvety. Well, it's not, wendleys aren't velvety, but this one, it really is not velvety at all. But other wendleys kind of have like more of like a velvety looking finish. I will say my wendley is probably like not the most beautiful wendley in the world, but that doesn't make it not beautiful in my eyes. But yeah, this is the cutting I think I'll send to Owen. We have time to let it like grow another leaf. Last winter when I propped this plant for Charmaine, this is the cutting. Last winter, it didn't take long for it to pop a growth point, and I planted it in just tree fern with perlite and pond. I didn't add soil to it, and I just have a leca layer at the bottom. And then here is this wendley. Yeah, this is the little butt cut I made, which I will grow out a little bit and sell. And these things are going to take quite a long time. So even though I chopped a bunch of plants the other day, I'm going to have to do more. I feel like my camera's overheating. I'm gonna need to take a quick break. Be right back. Couple of updates I want to show you from the exo side. I have not shown you this plant in the longest time, but she is so majestic. My Patricia, I just put out the most beautiful huge leaf, and I just treated this with spider mite knockout 2 days ago? 2 days ago? Yeah, I think that's when I filmed the video, and I'm like really nervous that the spider mite knockout is going to dry out this new leaf, but I did not want to risk a spider mite infestation. But I will also be equally sad if this new leaf kind of hardens off, like all shriveled and dried up and crispy, because knockout has been doing that to my fresh Anthurium leaves. It's just kind of been like a bit of a dilemma. Like, do I let the spider mite live and let the leaf kind of expand fully, or do I just spray that leaf and let it like shrivel up like dried seaweed? And that leaf is pretty much like a goner. So I've been going the route of spraying the plant anyways and just like ruining the new leaf. But it's definitely worse on Anthuriums compared to philodendrons. So this got completely sprayed, but like a light mist with spider mite knockout. I'll show you the product I'm talking about. It's by Dr. Doom. It's this guy here. The active ingredient is perethrin, so it's the same active ingredient as like some pesticides. Safer's Endol, which, speaking of Safer's Endol, my Endol, it's like this giant yellow bottle. Don't know where it is. I think it walked out of my house. I can't find it anywhere, and that is a little bit less drying than spider mite knockout. This is a little bit more potent, and it has like some sort of oil in it that makes leaves really shiny. So I think it also kind of suffocates the mites as well. But I wiped every single leaf down and I think she's okay. I think. This new leaf is probably like 6 inches longer than the previous one. And I say this is my favorite philodendron in my entire collection because she's beautiful and magical. I don't think I could live without this in my collection. Like if I were to move anywhere, I would try to bring it with me or get another one when I'm on the other side. Like I always think about this for when I move to the UK. I have to have this plant. It's such a nice, tidy growth pattern. Like everything hangs at the front. It doesn't have crazy long petioles. It's been so easy to train up this pole. It hasn't completely filled up the pole, but you know, there's a good amount of roots in there. There's one here. It's kind of coming out the top. I do have to kind of top that up a little bit. Actually, while we're here, I'm going to just water the pole. I have CalMag in this watering can, and the pole is mainly tree fern, but it also has perlite and a little bit of soil as well. And this is mainly how I water the plant, just through the pole. In the past, the root system down here has been like really thirsty, and it was really hard to keep the plant watered because it was always using up the water really quickly. But ever since I put it into no drainage soil and got it onto tree fern pole, it's been drying out very slowly. So I almost never have to water this plant or give it much attention at all. It just grows beautifully. It's right at the front of my exo and I stare at it every single day. But I'm just gonna back up so you can see her in all her glory. She's so beautiful and so much easier than so many philodendrons. Like it doesn't produce EFN that I've seen. It sometimes will get like these kind of light colored spots, like this one right here. There was another leaf that had it worse. I think maybe this one, but as it hardens, it kind of just disappears. So I'm really excited for this one to harden off. Hopefully it hardens off okay. But I will say Patricia, like emergent leaves, aren't that pretty until it kind of turns itself inside out and then it shows all the ruffles and dimples. The leaf prior to it was this one, this like fat guy. So I think it's probably gonna be a good like 6 to 9 inches longer. And I think it's slightly narrower as well. So yeah, kind of close call with the spider mites, but I did find spider mites in the exo that this one lives in. This Magnificum hybrid from Amanda got hit with spider mites. It had a new leaf and on camera, I chopped it right off because it was covered in speckles. I couldn't see the mites in terms of webbing and stuff, but like the spider mites can be so small, it can be hard to see. But it was really sad because I was looking forward to that leaf so much because this one brought me so much joy and I was hoping that it would like size up well. I might repot it fairly soon because it did root out in the tree fern soil pretty well, and it's been like a couple of months now, I think. No, probably more than that. I think I got it repotted maybe around September or something like that. I chopped it just right here because it's still on petiolar sheath growth. It's not on caterpillars yet, so it can still push a leaf out from here. Just really sad. So I'm really looking forward to getting the predatory mites in because this will not do. At this point, I can't put this plant into a tent or anything, even though I did spray it down. I just don't trust that it's spider mite free, so I don't want it going into anywhere that I have like plants to sell or like my most precious plants, even though this is a really precious plant. But yeah, that's an update on this guy. Another plant that lives in there, and I don't think I even showed you this plant when I got it. This is Elaphoglossum metallicum, and I got this from Tropicals at a pop-up. So I did import this last year, earlier in the spring, and I think mine came in with cold damage because it was looking like really gnarly. It was super orange. It was banged up like cosmetic damage, but it looked almost like it was sick. So when I imported that, I removed almost all of the roots on the metallicum, put it in tree fern. It was growing in my tent. It wasn't growing, it was living in my tent, and then it did not survive. So this time I barely took any of the moss off, and I just put that whole chunk because it was like kind of hard to remove the shredded moss that they put on the roots. So I just put that whole thing into tree fern soil. It has leca at the bottom. I try to keep a bit of a reservoir in there. This one's kind of almost dried out. There's a little bit of moisture at the bottom, but I'll just add a little bit. This is how I add water to a reservoir without soaking the main substrate too much. Just pour it onto the edge and let it run down the side a little bit because the substrate itself is still quite damp, but it's a fern, so I figured that it probably wants to be a little bit wetter than most of my aroids. So the really exciting thing, I think, is that I think this is a new frond. I'm gonna try not to hit the mic, but it is right there. This curled up little thing. I mean, it does look like a fern frond to me. This one also came in like kind of banged up. There was a good amount of damage, but it is such a pretty fern. And when I killed the first one, I really wanted a second try because it's so beautiful. It's so hard. Really, really plasticky, and it has that really beautiful blue tint. I think this is kind of a cooler fern than Microstorum thailandicum. I have both. I prefer this one. I think this one's cooler. But I'm still kind of trying to figure out ferns for myself, especially like these ones that aren't very commonly seen. But I haven't seen much decline in it. This kind of damage was already present on the plant when I got it. All these scratches were already on there. This one lives like just on the bottom of my exo and doesn't get a ton of light. I feel like I could get more light on it just to keep the blue hue, because I think the blue in these ferns is like a light reflective kind of defensive strategy. So when you don't give it a lot of light, it kind of goes a little bit more green. I've noticed that with my thailandicum, that like if I keep it a little bit more shaded, it grows kind of just like meh looking green leaves, and then when I get it closer to the light, it starts to produce more of that blue reflective tint. But first, since it's growing a leaf, or what I think is a leaf, I'm going to just keep things the way they are and then like reassess later. But this one was really easy to spray down for spider mites. Just wanted to quickly show you what I mean by like the drying out leaves with the spider mite knockout. So this one is my Magnificum crossed with Ace of Spades, and it definitely has spider mites. You can see the speckly damage. Again, I couldn't find the actual mites and I didn't see any webbing on any of the plants in there. I feel like this mini infestation is still in its early stages. So like I said, the dilemma is like, do I let the leaf fully expand or do I treat it, knowing that pretty much everything will damage an emergent Anthurium leaf. If I left the spray on, this would be crispy spinach. Like it'll be crunchy by now. So I was like doing a test in the video I scrapped. I was like, I'll test it, I'll spray it, and then I'll wash it off and see if that produces the same amount of damage. It produces less damage, but it's still crunchy. So it's really crunchy right here on the edge, and you can see, I just turn you around, it's like paper thin in these spots. It's just like super, super dried out, super damaged. I'm sad about it, but I'm not sad that I sprayed it. I did need to figure it out for myself, like what combination of like spraying and washing off would like preserve an emergent Anthurium leaf. So far I haven't found anything that will not damage Anthurium leaves. Charmaine's tried it with her alcohol Castile soap spray. That does exactly the same thing as knockout. Safer's End All can be okay in my experience if the leaf is nearly hardened off, but if it's in this like floppy stage, it will leave damage. But the alternative was to let those mites live, and that just really wasn't an option. So it's sad, but like the leaf was already ugly to begin with the speckly damage. But this one was repotted into a bigger pot. It went through a huge jump. It went from this size pot, so not even the biggest square pot, into this size pot, and it went into tree fern soil, and it has rooted out really, really well. The leaf jump, I would say, would have been significant had this leaf been able to fully harden. But yeah, I'm just gonna water it really quickly and put him back. My camera battery is flashing. Okay, I think I'm gonna cut the video here because my camera keeps running out of battery. I have so many more things to show you, but I think it's just good to leave it for another video because I really like filming these like little plant room hangouts where we don't need to repot anything, don't need to make any mess. I hope this video was entertaining for someone out there somewhere, but if not, perfect. But for those of you who stuck through to the end, thank you so much for watching. I love you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Mwah.